He's not just a celebrity, he's a cultural disruptor, fashion innovator, and environmental activist. Jaden Smith has taken his fame and flipped it into a movement. But what does life look like now for this modern-day visionary in 2025? In this video, we step into Jaden Smith's world of conscious luxury, from his futuristic, eco-designed homes and sustainable streetwear to his electric vehicles and water philanthropy projects that are changing lives. We'll explore the bold ideas that drive him, his boundary-pushing fashion empire, and his impressive net worth in 2025. This isn't just a story about success, it's about purpose, creativity, and a young icon building a better world in style. Jaden Christopher Sire Smith was born on July 8, 1998, in Malibu, California, into a world that most children only glimpse through television screens and movie posters. But for Jaden, Hollywood wasn't a distant dream. It was his backyard. The son of megastar Will Smith and multifaceted actress-musician Jada Pinkett Smith, Jaden was born into an empire of influence, talent, and visibility. From the moment he took his first steps, cameras followed. Not just paparazzi lenses, but the ever-curious gaze of the public eye. And yet, what might have easily become a story of entitlement took a far more curious route. The Smith household was anything but typical. Raised alongside his younger sister Willow, herself a creative prodigy, Jaden's childhood was a cocktail of play, philosophy, and performance. Will and Jada, both deeply philosophical and fiercely non-traditional in their parenting, nurtured curiosity over conformity. Bedtime stories often included spiritual teachings. Dinner conversations orbited around metaphysics, astrology, and ancient civilizations. While the world labeled them Hollywood royalty, the Smiths were cultivating something deeper: children who could think, question, and feel for themselves. Jaden often described his upbringing as expansive. "My parents always told me I could be whoever I wanted," he would later say. And in that freedom, he blossomed. Not as a carbon copy of his famous parents, but as something wholly his own. From a young age, he was drawn not just to performance, but to design, nature, and abstraction. He had an early fixation with patterns, sacred geometry, planetary systems, the way sunlight filtered through leaves. There was a sensitivity to him, a sense that he was perceiving the world on a slightly different frequency. While other kids memorized lines for school plays, Jaden was more interested in memorizing the vibrational energies of rooms, the unspoken languages of colors, shapes, and silence. And while his father's blockbuster charm and his mother's spiritual wisdom surrounded him like protective wings, Jaden was also acutely aware of the duality of fame. He would later speak about growing up in a bubble of perception, both elevated and trapped by his last name. Even as a child, he seemed to carry an understanding, an almost eerie self-awareness, that his life would never be ordinary. In the Smith home, love was unconditional, expression was encouraged, and rules were few but sacred. The foundation of Jaden's future, the creativity, the rebellion, the purpose, was poured in those early years. And though the world first knew him as Will Smith's son, it wouldn't take long before he began to bend that legacy into something of his own design. For most of his peers, education meant rigid school bells and standardized tests. For Jaden Smith, it meant open skies, abstract questions, and a relentless freedom to explore. He was homeschooled for most of his childhood, a decision made not out of isolation, but intention. Will and Jada wanted their children to grow up with a sense of autonomy, to learn not just how to recite information, but how to question the very shape of reality itself. His early curriculum was anything but conventional. While he studied math, science, and literature like any other student, Jaden's world was also filled with meditation, musical instruments, and philosophical inquiry. He read about energy fields and Egyptian mythology before he even had a driver's license. He wasn't just encouraged to think outside the box, he was taught that the box didn't exist. By the time most kids were navigating middle school social dynamics, Jaden was already diving into conversations about quantum physics and metaphysical consciousness. He'd later describe himself as addicted to thought. a seeker who found inspiration in the unlikely overlap of fashion, science, and spirituality. Among his earliest influences were creative revolutionaries who defied genre and gender: Kanye West, Kid Cudi, and Frank Ocean. These were artists who, like Jaden, refused to be confined to any single label. Jaden didn't just listen to their music, he studied them. Their emotional vulnerability, their sonic experimentation, their willingness to bleed into multiple mediums left a lasting imprint. They weren't just artists, they were architects of emotion, and that fascinated him. But Jaden's inspirations weren't limited to the entertainment world. He found himself drawn to thinkers like Alan Watts and Lao Tzu, to ideas from the Bhagavad Gita and Tao Te Ching. His bookshelf was as eclectic as his wardrobe. One shelf holding a beat-up science fiction novel, the next a hardcover on sacred geometry. Perhaps most pivotal was his exposure to architecture and design. Even as a child, he sketched building layouts and conceptual art pieces. He once said he dreamed of designing a school, a community, a whole new world from scratch, one not rooted in capitalism or conformity, but creativity. In many ways, this desire would later blossom into the ethos behind his collective MSFTS rep. Despite having access to elite schools and industry mentors, Jaden never pursued traditional higher education. Instead, he turned life into his classroom and experience into his professor. He once remarked that he learned more from a silent walk in nature than a semester in a lecture hall. Education, for Jaden, was never about checking boxes or earning degrees. It was about decoding the matrix of modern life, understanding the soul beneath the surface of things. It wasn't about becoming a better celebrity. It was about becoming a better human. Jaden Smith's entry into the world of entertainment was less a leap and more an organic step into the family rhythm. He was just 8 years old when he stood alongside his father, Will Smith, in The Pursuit of Happiness. In the film, their on-screen chemistry echoed their real-life bond, raw, vulnerable, and deeply human. The role of Christopher Gardner Jr. introduced audiences to Jaden's unfiltered emotion and natural charisma, earning him critical praise that was rare for someone so young. But even in this debut, Jaden's experience was a study in contrasts. While most child actors are thrust into the spotlight with little support, Jaden was surrounded by a protective web of family and mentors. The set was not just a workplace, it was an extension of his home. Between takes, Will would teach him the importance of authenticity, letting the moment happen, not forcing it. Jada emphasized the emotional nuance behind every line. For Jaden, acting was never about performing, it was about being. As the world watched a father and son struggle against the odds on screen, behind the scenes, Jaden was quietly coming to terms with the complex nature of fame. The applause felt good, but the attention also came with expectations. There were headlines, interviews, award shows. Suddenly, his childhood was unfolding in the public eye. It was exhilarating, yet, at times, overwhelming. His breakout moment came in 2010, when he starred in the reboot of The Karate Kid. This time, he stepped out from his father's shadow and into a leading role, sharing the screen with Jackie Chan. The transformation required more than memorizing lines. It meant mastering martial arts, enduring grueling training in China, and facing the pressure of carrying a global blockbuster on his young shoulders. Jaden's commitment was total. He spent months learning Kung Fu, waking up at dawn to train in remote villages. He connected with his character, Dre Parker, not just as a role but as a mirror. Both were outsiders. Both had to fight to find their place. The film's success was explosive, grossing over $350 million worldwide and catapulting Jaden into a new echelon of stardom. Suddenly, he wasn't just the son of Will Smith. He was Jaden Smith, a star in his own right. Yet beneath the surface of red carpets and box office numbers, Jaden wrestled with an early awareness of duality. Fame brought opportunity but also scrutiny. He felt the world's gaze, admiring, critical, unblinking. In interviews, he spoke with a wisdom that belied his years, sometimes cryptic, often philosophical. There was a sense that he was searching for something deeper than applause or approval. This period marked the beginning of an inner journey for Jaden. The seeds of independence, curiosity, and rebellion that his parents planted early on now began to grow into something bigger. The entertainment industry had given him a platform, but what Jaden would do with it, that was entirely up to him. Jaden Smith could have stayed in his lane. After the success of The Karate Kid, Hollywood was ready to carve a golden path for him. Sequel deals, blockbuster scripts, high-budget franchises. But Jaden didn't want a career that was handed to him. He wanted to build one that mirrored his inner universe. Unpredictable, expressive, deeply real. So, he stepped away from the formula. He turned down roles, went quiet for a while, and began experimenting. In the studio, in front of the camera, and in the mirror. What emerged wasn't a polished teen idol. It was a genre-bending artist, a spiritual provocateur, a new voice for a generation raised on both Wi-Fi and wonder. Music became his medium of reinvention. In 2017, he released Sire, a debut album that was both a sonic experiment and a poetic diary. Named after his middle name, the project blended elements of psychedelic rock, ambient trap, emo rap, and existential philosophy. The visuals were cinematic. The lyrics wrestled with loneliness, light, heartbreak, and healing. This wasn't the voice of a child star trying to stay relevant. It was a young man carving truth out of chaos. Tracks like Icon and Falcon revealed his ambition. Songs like 90 and Lost Boy exposed his vulnerability. Critics were unsure how to categorize him, and that suited Jaden just fine. He wasn't looking to fit in. He was trying to find form for a feeling. Meanwhile, Jaden's appearance was becoming just as iconic as his sound. He wore skirts to red carpets. He painted his nails. He bleached his hair, dyed it pink, shaved it off entirely. Fashion for Jaden wasn't about trends. It was a protest, a statement, a soft war against the binaries that tried to box him in. He co-founded MSFTS Rep, short for Misfits Republic, a collective and clothing line that blurred the lines between fashion label and philosophical movement. Its message was clear: question everything, express everything, belong nowhere. As the 2010s closed and a new decade began, Jaden had transformed from Hollywood heir to artistic outlier. He'd gained the respect of his peers, the fascination of the fashion world, and a devoted following of young people who saw in him not just a celebrity, but a symbol of self-actualization. The rise wasn't meteoric. It was metamorphic. Jaden didn't just change his image, he changed his shape, and the world was watching, unsure of where he'd go next, but certain it wouldn't be anywhere typical. By the time Jaden Smith turned 20, his resume read like a multidimensional map: actor, rapper, fashion designer, activist, environmental entrepreneur. But Jaden never saw these as separate pursuits. For him, each lane was simply a different frequency of the same creative current, a way to translate the unseen into something you could wear, hear, or touch. Following the success of Sire, Jaden dropped Eris in 2019, a companion piece and conceptual inversion of its predecessor. Where Sire was sun-drenched and introspective, Eris was dystopian, chaotic, urgent. The music grew louder, the visuals more confrontational. It felt like watching a soul in motion, evolving in real time. With songs like Again and Summertime in Paris, featuring Willow, he balanced harsh industrial beats with moments of pure lyrical softness. The project was divisive, daring, and undeniably Jaden. Around the same time, he ramped up his ventures beyond the studio. In 2015, he co-founded Just Water, a sustainable water company selling ethically sourced spring water in recyclable paper-based cartons. What started as a socially conscious business idea grew into a global brand, sold in over a dozen countries and backed by celebrities, activists, and climate scientists alike. Jaden wasn't just the face of the brand. He was in boardrooms, at climate conferences, and on the ground delivering water to communities in need, including Flint, Michigan. He also launched the I Love You restaurant, a free vegan food truck that served healthy meals to people experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles. Unlike typical charity ventures, Jaden approached this with the same artistic care as he did an album or fashion line. The truck was sleek, minimalist, and painted in soft pastels. The food was gourmet. The goal wasn't just nourishment, it was dignity. In the fashion world, MSFTS Rep continued to blossom into a global movement. The brand became a mainstay at Paris Fashion Week, often described as philosophy you can wear. Jaden's designs featured cryptic symbols, celestial diagrams, and hand-scrawled messages that invited questions more than answers. He didn't just walk runways, he redefined them. He collaborated with Tyler, the creator, performed at Coachella, toured internationally, and appeared on late-night stages. But even then, Jaden refused to play by industry rules. He turned interviews into meditations, performances into spiritual ceremonies. His identity was never static. It was a kaleidoscope in motion. Where others sought acclaim, Jaden sought impact. And in the process, he built a career not measured by awards or chart positions, but by the emotional fingerprints he left on everything he touched. If Jaden Smith's career is a constellation, then his side projects are the stars that connect it all. Each one small in scope at first glance, but together forming a map of his expansive mind. For Jaden, business is not about capital, it's about culture. It's about using influence as a tool, not a trophy. One of his most influential initiatives remains MSFTS Rep. A brand, yes, but also a collective, a school of thought, and a creative safe haven. What started as a clothing line has grown into a global network of artists, designers, musicians, and misfits. MSFTS Rep hosts art pop-ups, science meets-style think tanks, and educational initiatives rooted in emotional intelligence and metaphysics. To join MSFTS Rep is not to wear a logo, but to adopt a lens, one that sees the world through disruption and wonder. Then there's Just Water, which began as a teenager's frustration with single-use plastic and became one of the most forward-thinking beverage brands of the 21st century. Under Jaden's vision, the company went beyond profit, partnering with communities to build better water systems and inspiring other celebrities to invest in eco-conscious entrepreneurship. In 2019, Jaden launched the I Love You restaurant, a food truck initiative that offered healthy, plant-based meals for free to people experiencing homelessness. By 2025, the project has evolved into a scalable model with plans to expand into brick-and-mortar locations in underserved neighborhoods across the U.S. More recently, Jaden has entered the digital art and NFT space, but in true Jaden fashion, it's not just about tokens, it's about philosophy. His limited edition audio-visual NFTs include spoken-word meditations, cosmic soundscapes, and symbolic visuals designed to raise your frequency. He's also begun experimenting with virtual reality concerts, interactive musical experiences where fans don't just listen, they enter the music. Whether it's clean water, clean energy, or clean thoughts, Jaden's ventures are never separate from his purpose. Each project is a node in a larger matrix, a vision of the future where creativity, consciousness, and community are inseparable. In 2025, Jaden Smith's lifestyle isn't just about luxury, it's about intention. While his peers may opt for sprawling estates packed with trophies of success, Jaden's home is more of a living sanctuary, a temple of design and self-reflection nestled deep in the hills of Hidden Hills, California. His current residence, valued at over $11 million, is a 7,000 square foot fusion of futuristic minimalism and organic architecture. The house feels like something dreamed up by a philosopher architect. Concrete meets clay, glass wraps around raw timber beams, and indoor gardens breathe life into every corridor. It's a place where nature isn't shut out, it's invited in. Each room tells a story. The entryway greets guests not with opulence, but with a silence that feels sacred. The living area is spacious and clean, centered around a sunken fire pit surrounded by custom-built seating shaped like a lotus. Lighting is soft and intentional, mimicking the hues of sunrise and sunset. There are no televisions in sight, only art, music, and wide, open space to think. In one wing of the home is a private recording studio, filled with analog equipment, crystals, incense, and canvases with half-finished phrases painted in bold brushstrokes. In another, a meditation dome, a geodesic structure made from reclaimed materials, built entirely for stillness. Jaden often starts his day there, sitting cross-legged, journaling about time, thought, or sound frequencies. The kitchen is fully plant-based, with vertical herb gardens climbing up the walls and a zero-waste design philosophy. Even the utensils are sustainably sourced. Meals here are rituals, colorful, seasonal, shared with friends or family over long conversations about music, love, and the future of the planet. Outside, the backyard looks less like a celebrity playground and more like a Mars colony. There's a permaculture garden, a solar roof array, a minimalist pool with filtered mineral water, and a series of reflective panels that bounce light into the space like kinetic sculptures. At night, the area glows with soft bioluminescent lighting, giving the impression of walking through a dream. This isn't just a house, it's a reflection of Jaden's worldview. It's a reminder that success doesn't have to scream. Sometimes it can hum softly through the leaves, echo through open spaces, or live quietly in the corners of the mind. Jaden Smith doesn't just drive cars, he curates them. Like everything in his world, his vehicles reflect a deeper philosophy. While some stars build garages to showcase wealth, Jaden's collection is a gallery of sustainability, individuality, and future-forward design. At the heart of his fleet is a customized electric Rolls-Royce Wraith, stripped of its traditional gas engine and retrofitted with an ultra-quiet electric drivetrain. Painted in a soft matte white with iridescent trim, it moves like a whisper and looks like it belongs in a sci-fi film. The interior is equally unconventional. Vegan leather, ambient lighting, and sound-reactive LED panels embedded into the ceiling. Then there's his Tesla Model X, one of the earliest cars in his collection, now upgraded with solar-integrated features and custom gull-wing doors etched with sacred geometry. Jaden has often said he views Tesla not just as a car company, but as a movement, one that aligns with his obsession for clean energy and functional innovation. His vintage Porsche 911, meanwhile, is his nod to classic design. He drives it rarely, mostly on late-night city cruises, windows down, music low. It's been re-engineered to run on biofuel, and the paint job, midnight blue with gold accents, was inspired by a dream he once had about stardust. Also in his collection is a hydrogen-powered concept vehicle, still unreleased to the public, which Jaden co-designed in partnership with a Scandinavian tech firm. Shaped like a glass teardrop and capable of communicating with smart cities, it feels less like a car and more like a vessel for a new kind of urban living. And when the road just won't do, Jaden takes to the sky in a retro-modified Gulfstream G550 private jet, retrofitted with carbon offsets, biodegradable interiors, and an ultra-minimalist cabin designed for silence and meditative flight. The aircraft serves less as a status symbol and more as a traveling cocoon, a space where he can write, think, and disappear from the noise. In Jaden's world, movement isn't just about getting from A to B. It's about carrying your values with you, across landscapes, across time. Jaden Smith doesn't do politics in the traditional sense. He's not a pundit, and you won't find him backing parties or trading sound bites. But he is political in the purest form. He stands for something, and he's not afraid to say it. From an early age, Jaden has used his platform to advocate for clean water access, most notably through his company, Just Water. What started as a business grew into a humanitarian mission when he personally mobilized resources to help residents in Flint, Michigan, where access to safe drinking water had been compromised for years. He visited the community, listened to stories, and helped deliver mobile filtration systems, turning headlines into healing. He's also been an outspoken supporter of mental health awareness, particularly for youth and creatives of color. Through interviews, social posts, and public speaking events, Jaden has encouraged open conversations around anxiety, depression, and emotional processing. He doesn't speak from a pedestal, he speaks from experience. His vulnerability has become one of his greatest strengths. Jaden's activism touches gender identity and expression as well. By wearing skirts, painting his nails, and refusing to conform to fashion's gender codes, he's made bold statements without ever raising his voice. In doing so, he's helped redefine masculinity for a generation of young people who see themselves reflected in his fearless ambiguity. He's participated in climate protests, spoken out in support of Black Lives Matter, and continually emphasizes the need for global consciousness over nationalism. Jaden's political stance, if it can be called that, is less about division and more about elevation, a call to awaken, to act, to imagine something more compassionate. To understand Jaden Smith's outer world, the music, the fashion, the movement, you have to understand his inner world, and that world is vast, quiet, and lit by questions rather than answers. For Jaden, wellness isn't just a self-care routine, it's a worldview. It's how he breathes, eats, thinks, and creates. His diet is almost entirely plant-based, a choice driven by both health and ethics. He often talks about food not just as fuel but as frequency, how what we consume affects our vibration. Smoothies filled with spirulina and hemp protein, meals infused with turmeric, sea moss, and ginger. His kitchen is more apothecary than pantry. He believes what we eat is a form of prayer. Jaden is also a deep practitioner of meditation and mindfulness. He begins most days in stillness, sometimes alone in his backyard dome, sometimes guided by binaural beats or ambient nature soundscapes. He journals daily, often writing in free-form poetry or stream-of-consciousness prose. His entries are explorations of time, energy, purpose, a kind of cartography of the soul. When asked in interviews about religion, he often sidesteps labels. He quotes Rumi, references Eastern philosophies, and describes God more as a field of intelligence than a figure. "I don't believe in time," he once said. "I believe in now." For Jaden, spirituality is not doctrine, it's design. It's how you align with the present and become a clear vessel for creation. Even his fitness routine reflects his layered approach to wellness. He trains with movement artists, not just trainers. Martial arts, skateboarding, and dance are all part of his regimen, not just for the body, but for the rhythm it brings to the mind. Ultimately, Jaden's belief system isn't something he preaches. It's something he lives, quietly, weirdly, fully. In a world of noise, his philosophy is simple. Feel more, fear less, and don't just find your truth, build it. For someone so visible, Jaden Smith remains remarkably private. His personal life, particularly his romantic relationships, exists in that hazy zone between myth and mystery. Over the years, he's been linked to a handful of names, some confirmed, others only whispered in headlines. One of the most talked about was his long-standing friendship and rumored romance with Tyler, the creator. Jaden once referred to Tyler as his boyfriend during a live performance, sparking a viral moment that neither confirmed nor denied anything. It was less about declaration and more about disruption, challenging norms, playing with language, letting ambiguity speak volumes. When asked about his sexuality, Jaden has offered no labels. Instead, he speaks in terms of fluidity, of identity, of love, of being. He's hinted at relationships with both men and women, but always returns to one truth. Love is the only label I care about. At the center of his personal world remains his family, an ever-present force that shaped not just his values, but his vision. His bond with Willow is particularly unique. More than siblings, they're collaborators, mirrors, spiritual allies. They've performed together, meditated together, and often appear side by side at events in coordinated outfits that feel more like sacred armor than fashion statements. Willow, too, has carved her own path in music and wellness, and together, they represent a new kind of sibling synergy, equal parts art and energy. With Will and Jada, the relationship is layered. There's deep respect, visible love, and an ever-evolving dialogue between generations. Jaden has spoken candidly about the challenges of growing up under a global spotlight, even asking for legal emancipation at the age of 15, not out of rebellion, but as a symbolic step toward self-definition. The Smiths embraced the conversation, not as a rift, but as a rite of passage. In their world, boundaries are fluid, and emotional honesty is a form of growth. In 2025, Jaden's personal life remains sacred ground. He shares glimpses, never the whole picture. But what's clear is that his relationships, whether romantic or familial, are built on depth, dialogue, and the freedom to evolve. Beyond the headlines and spotlight, Jaden Smith harbors a set of skills and passions that reveal a mind constantly in motion. Most people know him as a performer and provocateur. Fewer know him as a builder, a coder, a quiet engineer of ideas. One of Jaden's lesser-known passions is architecture. He's been sketching conceptual structures since his early teens, many of them inspired by sacred geometry and eco-utopian design. He once said his dream is to build a community, off-grid, carbon-neutral, self-sustaining, and shaped like a Fibonacci spiral. He's even taken informal mentorships with sustainable architects and contributed to design concepts for humanitarian housing in disaster zones. Jaden also codes, not in the tech startup sense, but in a more poetic one, building generative art algorithms, experimenting with sound-reactive visuals, and using open-source tools to create immersive digital experiences. For him, software is just another artistic medium, like paint or melody. He's also a skilled skateboarder, a carryover from his childhood. He rides not for attention, but for clarity. Skateboarding, to Jaden, is meditation in motion, a way to reset his mind when the noise gets too loud. Another hidden facet? Martial arts. What began as training for the Karate Kid has evolved into an ongoing practice. He's studied various disciplines over the years: Kung Fu, Capoeira, Tai Chi, not competitively, but spiritually. The movement, the discipline, the breathwork, it all fits seamlessly into his philosophy of mind-body balance. And then there's writing. Jaden journals? Yes, but he's also written short stories, speculative scripts, and sci-fi screenplays that blend existential questions with cosmic narratives. He dreams of directing a surrealist film someday, a project where architecture, energy, and time collapse into one visual poem. Beneath the public image is a polymath quietly planting seeds, far from the cameras. These talents may not trend, but they're the blueprint of something timeless. For someone who radiates creative freedom, Jaden Smith has also faced the weight of public misunderstanding. His journey, though often painted in color and light, hasn't been without shadows. But Jaden doesn't run from discomfort. He studies it, transforms it, and folds it into his art. One of the earliest media storms came not from scandal but from skepticism. His cryptic interviews and abstract tweets, often referencing metaphysical theories or non-linear time, became easy targets for tabloids and Twitter alike. Critics labeled him eccentric, out of touch, or simply weird. His intelligence was questioned, his sincerity mocked. But Jaden never backtracked. He let the noise pass. "If they don't understand me," he once said, "it just means I'm ahead of schedule." Another moment that sparked headlines was his decision, at just 15, to seek legal emancipation from his parents. The move wasn't driven by conflict, it was symbolic, a gesture of independence. Still, the public twisted the story into narratives of rebellion and family dysfunction. In truth, Will and Jada supported the decision, understanding it as part of Jaden's self-definition. But once again, the nuance got lost in translation. There were also rumors about his health. In 2019, during a particularly intense stretch of his vegan journey, Jaden appeared visibly underweight in public photos. The concern quickly snowballed into criticism, with media outlets speculating about his diet and well-being. Jaden later addressed it openly, revealing he'd been suffering from nutrient deficiencies and had since adjusted his approach. Rather than retreat, he used the moment to spark dialogue about the complexity of wellness, especially for young people navigating extremes. Through it all, Jaden never pivoted to appease anyone. If anything, the criticism sharpened his mission. Each setback became a catalyst, each misunderstanding a mirror. And with each public stumble, he rose more grounded, more clear in who he was and who he was not. Legacy is usually measured in trophies, chart positions, or decades in the spotlight. But Jaden Smith is redefining that timeline. At just 26 years old, his legacy is not in accolades, it's in influence. And his impact, though unconventional, is undeniably generational. Jaden didn't just show up, he shifted the space. He blurred the boundaries between art and activism, between fashion and philosophy, between expression and identity. In a culture obsessed with definitions, He made ambiguity beautiful. He made vulnerability powerful. And he gave young people permission to explore their own identities in ways that felt less about rebellion and more about revelation. His androgynous fashion choices, once criticized, are now canonized in youth culture. His music, spiritually soaked, emotionally unguarded, paved the way for a new wave of artists unafraid to feel. And his business ventures, especially Just Water, proved that celebrity capitalism can evolve into conscious capitalism, into something that uplifts rather than exploits. Jaden has also become a symbol of emotional intelligence and masculinity. While mainstream narratives often reward bravado, he normalized softness. He cried in songs. He spoke about energy fields and heartbreak. He challenged the rigid coding of what a man should be, offering instead a blueprint for fluidity, honesty, and healing. And then there's the cultural ripple effect. Thousands of teens who joined MSFTS Rep, not for clothes, but for belonging. Activists who cite Jaden as the reason they learned about Flint, or chose to go plant-based. Artists who say his albums helped them through depression. He's not just a celebrity, he's a cipher, a medium through which the next generation is rewriting the rules. In classrooms, in fashion shows, in climate conferences, in quiet bedrooms across the globe, Jaden's fingerprints are there. He didn't wait to become an elder to start building his legacy. He's doing it now, in real time, by choosing purpose over performance, message over marketing. If legacy is what you leave behind, then Jaden Smith's has already begun. And it's still unfolding, like a lotus, like a thought, like a future just starting to bloom. Jaden Smith is more than a name. He's more than a brand. He's more than the son of icons or the face of a movement. He's a living question, one that asks, what if we lived without limits? From the red carpet to remote villages, from rap verses to water bottles, from Fashion Week to meditation domes, Jaden has shown that a life doesn't have to follow a straight line to be meaningful. It can spiral. It can float. It can grow in directions that don't always make sense to the outside world, but feel true on the inside. In 2025, his lifestyle isn't about indulgence, it's about intention. His house isn't a fortress, it's a vessel. His cars aren't status symbols, they're statements of sustainability. His wealth isn't just money, it's a mosaic of creativity, purpose, and connection. His partner? Still a mystery, perhaps because some parts of him are meant to remain sacred, unspoken, and his alone. What Jaden represents is rare in today's celebrity ecosystem, a refusal to conform, paired with a refusal to remain silent. He is a cultural disruptor, not because he tries to be, but because he dares to be whole. In a world that often moves too fast, Jaden Smith invites us to slow down, look inward, and ask better questions. And that perhaps is the greatest luxury of all.